Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone, a friend, a partner, maybe a colleague. Their smile is calm, their words polished, their gestures reassuring. On the surface, everything seems genuine. Yet deep in your gut, something whispers that what you see is not what truly is. That behind the smooth persona, another story is unfolding, a hidden self they cannot quite control. Carl Jung, the father of depth psychology, devoted his life to studying this exact tension, the fragile mask of the persona and the wild, untamed forces of the unconscious. He discovered that no matter how carefully we construct our image, the truth of who we are leaks out in two unmistakable ways. These two psychological signatures are so subtle, yet so raw, that they pierce through appearances, showing us a person's authentic character, sometimes in moments they least expect. This is not about analyzing achievements, charisma, or polite manners. Those are surface illusions. Jung teaches us that the true essence of character is revealed not when someone is composed and admired, but when they are cornered, pressured, or betrayed by their own unconscious. And if you dare to look closer, you will not only read others more clearly, you will come face to face with your own unspoken truths. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." These two revelations, as unsettling as they are, act like mirrors. They don't simply expose others. They force us to acknowledge what we've been hiding from ourselves. And in that confrontation lies both danger and liberation. The first revelation is what I call the shadow map. Pay close attention to the people someone criticizes most fiercely, and you'll glimpse the very qualities they've repressed within themselves. Their harshest judgments are rarely about the world, they are echoes of their own disowned traits. For example, a man who rails endlessly against arrogance may beneath the surface struggle with his own fragile sense of confidence. A woman who condemns others for being selfish may secretly fear her own unmet needs. Our judgments, Jung revealed, are projections, unconscious attempts to exile what we cannot bear to own in ourselves. The stronger the reaction, the closer you are to their shadow. But there's another side. Projection is not only about hatred. Sometimes it shows up in admiration. When someone constantly puts others on pedestals, "She's so brave, he's so brilliant," they may be projecting qualities they themselves possess, but have never dared to embody. The shadow is not always dark. Sometimes it hides our brightest light. The second revelation is what I call mask fracture. This happens when the persona, the polished mask someone wears for the world, is suddenly challenged. Under pressure, when a person is criticized, exposed, or caught off guard, their mask cracks. And in that raw moment, their authentic patterns spill out. Perhaps you've seen this happen. Someone admired for their composure suddenly lashes out when questioned. A leader praised for fairness deflects blame onto their team when mistakes surface. In these moments, you glimpse the truth, not the performance, but the naked soul caught off guard. Jung understood this with precision. What people reveal under stress tells us far more than what they show in comfort. Words and gestures can be rehearsed, but when someone's mask slips, their unconscious defenses erupt, and those defenses never lie. And so these two windows, the shadow in projection and the mask in fracture, are not just methods for reading others. They are invitations to turn the gaze inward. Because every judgment you make and every crack in your own persona is also a message from your unconscious. Now pause here. Let me leave you with a question. Who do you find yourself judging most intensely? And how do you react when your own image is threatened? These are not easy questions, but if you dare to look into them, you begin the journey Jung called individuation, the path to becoming whole. Think of the last time someone's mask slipped in front of you. Maybe it was subtle, an eye twitch, a sudden sharpness in their voice, a defensive smirk. Or maybe it was dramatic, an outburst, an accusation, a wave of blame, cast on others. These moments are not accidents. They are the unconscious breaking through the thin wall of the persona. Jung believed that the persona, our social mask, is like armor. It protects us, it allows us to move through the world. But armor is heavy. It cracks under strain. And when it does, the raw character beneath is revealed. Let me tell you a story. There was a manager respected for her professionalism. Calm, reliable, endlessly composed. Her team admired her ability to stay steady, no matter the storm. But one afternoon, a client questioned her decision in front of everyone. For the first time, her mask faltered. Her voice rose, her eyes hardened, and she shifted blame onto the very people she once defended. In that single moment, years of cultivated image collapsed, exposing something truer, something rawer, her fear of losing control. Jung would say, the foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering. She could not bear the sting of criticism, so she erupted in defense. That eruption spoke louder about her character than a decade of polite interactions ever could. This is the essence of mask fracture, what emerges when someone can no longer maintain the performance. And once you know to look for it, you'll notice it everywhere. But here's the twist. It isn't only others who reveal themselves. You too fracture when your mask is shaken. Maybe it's when someone interrupts you, when your joke falls flat, when you're kept waiting longer than you expected. Suddenly, your tone shifts, your expression hardens, or you retreat into silence. These micro breakdowns are tiny windows into your unguarded self. Now let us return to the other revelation, shadow projection. It may seem distant, even abstract, but once you observe it closely, it becomes undeniable. Picture a man who constantly criticizes his colleague for being manipulative. He insists the colleague is dishonest, always charming clients for his own gain. Yet, what he fails to see is his own buried desire for influence. His judgment is not really about the other man, it is about the part of himself he has disowned. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Every time we condemn another, we reveal a map of our own inner conflicts. That map is our shadow. The traits we reject in others are often the very qualities we've buried deep within. And projections are not always negative. Sometimes they appear as admiration that borders on worship. When someone constantly declares, "She's so confident, he's so talented," they may be recognizing a capacity within themselves that has not yet been claimed. Jung called this positive projection. We hide our gold in the shadow as often as we bury our darkness. The key is intensity. Pay attention to what provokes the strongest reaction, whether praise or condemnation. That reaction is a clue. It tells you what lies hidden in the unconscious. And here's where things become unsettling. Once you notice someone's shadow projection, you also begin noticing your own. The judgments you carry, the people who irritate you, the ones you secretly envy, they are not accidents. They are mirrors. They reveal what you deny, what you long for, and what you fear. Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate. It oppresses. When you attack another for their flaws, you are often oppressing yourself. When you worship another for their gifts, you are often hiding your own. So the two reveals, shadow projection and mask fracture, are not tricks to unmask others. They are instruments for self-revelation. To see them in others is powerful. To see them in yourself is transformative. But here lies the danger. Once you gain this knowledge, it is tempting to use it as a weapon, to expose others, to feel superior, to analyze without mercy. Jung warned against this. The true purpose of depth psychology is not to dominate, but to liberate. Every judgment, every fracture, every shadow you notice should deepen your compassion, not sharpen your criticism. Because in truth, each of us is fighting a battle between the mask we wear and the shadow we bury. The person across from you is not your enemy. They are a reflection, a mirror. And when you see their unconscious patterns, you are seeing your own. Now let me ask you again, when was the last time you judged someone harshly? And when was the last time your own mask slipped under pressure? Those two questions are not separate. They are the same doorway leading to the same room. The room of the unconscious, waiting to be explored. We've explored the two great reveals, the shadow that leaks through our judgments and the mask fracture that erupts under pressure. But Jung's work doesn't end there. When these two forces collide, another test emerges, a deeper way to read character one that reveals not just who a person is, but who they might become. I call this the integration test. Here's how it works. When someone's shadow projection is reflected back to them, when they are gently shown that their harsh judgment or unguarded reaction might actually point to something within themselves, their response speaks volumes. Imagine two possible reactions. First, the defensive pattern. Confront someone who criticizes others as arrogant, and they may lash out. "Are you calling me arrogant? That's absurd. I'm nothing like them." Their words slam the door on self-reflection. Their character remains rigid, trapped in denial. Now, the integrative pattern. Another person faced with the same reflection might pause. They might breathe, consider, and say quietly, "Maybe you're right. Perhaps what bothers me is also something I struggle with. Maybe I envy the confidence I haven't yet claimed for myself." This response reveals humility, openness, and the courage to face one's own shadow. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The integration test asks, can this person look into their own darkness, or will they turn away? It's here that three distinct character types emerge. The first is the unconscious type, those who have no awareness of their projections. They remain blind forever, blaming others, forever surprised by the conflicts they create. The second is the aware but defended type. They recognize their patterns intellectually, but emotionally, they cannot let go. They might say, "I know I judge people too much," but when the moment comes, they still attack, still defend, still collapse into the old ways. And finally, the integrated type. These are the rare individuals who can notice their projections, acknowledge their reactions, and even use them as lessons. They do not collapse into shame or denial. They see their shadow as a teacher. Jung called these individuals conscious, not perfect, but awake. This matters because how a person responds to their own unconscious determines everything: how they handle conflict, how they grow in relationships, how they face criticism, and how they connect authentically with others. Now let me illustrate this with a simple story. David, a successful architect, despises his colleague Marcus, constantly calling him fake and manipulative. His anger is sharp, his voice cutting his jaw tight whenever Marcus is praised. But beneath his condemnation hides envy. David secretly longs for Marcus's easy charm and social fluency, but he cannot accept this longing, so he rejects it. His hatred is his own shadow speaking. Now imagine asking David, "Do you ever wish you were more socially skilled yourself?" In one world, David snaps back, "That's ridiculous. I don't need to be fake like Marcus." This is the defensive type, closed, rigid, unwilling to face the truth. In another world, David sighs and admits, "Actually, yes, sometimes I do wish I had those skills. Maybe I'm jealous of him. Maybe I've been hiding that from myself." This is the integrative type, capable of growth, able to hold paradox, no longer a prisoner to denial. This is the power of the integration test. It doesn't just expose character, it reveals potential. Because the real question is not, do you have a shadow? We all do. The real question is, what will you do when the shadow is shown to you? And here's where Jung's wisdom becomes truly transformative. To pass the integration test is not to banish the shadow, but to work with it, to see judgments as mirrors, to see mask fractures as teachers, to see every reaction as information about yourself. This path is not easy. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." To face the shadow means to confront what you've buried, what you've denied, what you've feared. But in that confrontation lies the possibility of becoming whole. So ask yourself, how do you react when someone reflects your patterns back to you? Do you defend? Do you deflect? Or do you pause and allow the truth to reshape you? Because in that moment right there, you reveal not just your character, but your capacity for transformation. So far, we've uncovered Jung's two great reveals, the shadow and the mask. And we've seen how the integration test exposes not just who someone is, but whether they can grow. But now comes the real challenge. How do we use this knowledge in everyday life? Because here's the truth. Psychological insight is a blade. In the right hands, it heals, it liberates, it deepens connection. In the wrong hands, it wounds, it manipulates, it destroys trust. Jung warned of this danger. Once you see the unconscious, it is tempting to use it for power instead of compassion. Let's begin with romantic relationships. When you listen to your partner speak about their exes, their co-workers, or their friends, pay attention to the judgments they repeat. Do they constantly complain about selfish people? This might point to their own hidden struggle with self-advocacy. Do they criticize others for being needy? They may be suppressing their own need for connection. But here's the key. Never weaponize these observations. To use someone's projections against them is to betray the very trust that makes intimacy possible. Instead, invite curiosity. You might say, "It sounds like that person's neediness really bothers you. Do you ever feel like you can't express your own needs?" This opens a door not for confrontation, but for deeper intimacy. Now consider the professional world. Watch how your colleagues handle feedback mistakes or public criticism. The ones who deflect blame, grow defensive, or lash out are revealing their unintegrated shadows. The ones who pause, reflect, and even admit their faults are showing maturity, the capacity to lead with authenticity. This awareness can change how you collaborate. Instead of reacting to someone's defensiveness with your own, you can recognize what's happening beneath the surface. Their reaction is not always about you, it's about their fear of exposure, their mask cracking. This knowledge lets you set boundaries without hostility, and sometimes even offer compassion where once you felt only anger. Now let's turn to parenting. Teenagers especially are experts at projection. When your child complains that their friends are fake selfish or attention-seeking, they may unknowingly be wrestling with those same traits within themselves. Instead of scolding, you can guide them into reflection. Do you ever feel pressure to act differently around others? Maybe that's why it bothers you so much. In that moment, you're teaching them self-awareness rather than judgment. But remember, these insights are a two-way mirror. Every time you catch your child projecting, every time you notice a coworker's mask slip, you are also being shown your own patterns. Jung wrote, "Everyone you meet knows something you don't know, but need to know. Learn from them." This is where the danger lies. Some people, once they discover these tools, become what I call shadow hunters. They use psychological knowledge not to understand, but to attack. They feel superior for seeing through others, for unmasking the hidden flaws of those around them. They analyze ruthlessly while avoiding their own self-examination. This, Jung warned, is poison. To wield insight as a weapon is to turn psychology into manipulation. True understanding, amimsan, should soften the heart, not harden it. If your knowledge makes you more arrogant, you've misunderstood the lesson. The correct path is what Jung called an ethical relationship with the unconscious. This means using insight to foster compassion, not dominance. When you see someone's shadow, you don't use it to shame them, you hold it with empathy. When you notice a mask fracture, you don't gloat, you understand it as a moment of human vulnerability. Because beneath every projection lies pain. Beneath every mask lies fear. And to see those patterns clearly is to witness another person's humanity. Jung once wrote, "The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers." If you can hold this truth, your insight becomes medicine, not poison. So whether in love, in work, or in family, the practice is the same. Notice the shadow, notice the mask, but always begin with yourself. Ask, where does this live in me? What is this showing me about my own hidden conflicts? Because in the end, every judgment you make, every irritation you feel, is also a mirror reflecting back a part of your own soul. And that is why Jung's framework is so powerful and so dangerous. It shows us not only the people across the table, but the stranger within our own heart. There is a moment, if you follow Jung's path far enough, when the world itself begins to change. People no longer appear as random strangers' obstacles or even enemies. Instead, each one becomes a mirror, a reflection of your own hidden psyche. Jung called this the mirror effect, and it is perhaps the most unsettling discovery of all. Here's what it means. Every person who stirs emotion in you, whether admiration, irritation, envy, or rage, is showing you something about yourself. The arrogant boss, the needy friend, the confident artist, the dishonest politician, they are not just out there. They are projections of what lives in here within your unconscious. Think of the people who trigger you the most, the ones whose behavior you can't stand. Maybe you despise arrogance or dishonesty or weakness. Jung would say, examine that judgment, for it is telling you where your own shadow lives. The arrogant person may awaken your buried hunger for confidence. The dishonest one may reflect your own fear of being false. The weak one may mirror the vulnerability you refuse to admit. Now, consider the people you admire. The singer whose creativity enchants you. The leader whose courage inspires you. The friend whose confidence you envy. These qualities, too, are projections, but of the golden kind. Jung insisted that our brightest gifts, as much as our darkest traits, often hide in shadow until we are ready to claim them. Admiration is the unconscious saying, "This too is yours." This is why certain people feel strangely familiar the moment you meet them. Jung called this the recognition of the archetypal, the sense that another person is embodying a universal pattern that resonates with your own psyche. It's why some people captivate you instantly, while others repel you just as quickly. They are vibrating against the hidden strings of your unconscious. Once you begin to see the mirror effect, life itself becomes a classroom. Every conflict, every relationship, every passing irritation is a lesson in disguise. The colleague who frustrates you is your teacher. The stranger who inspires you is your teacher. Even your harshest critic, the one who wounds your pride, is your teacher. They show you the parts of yourself you have not yet integrated. But here lies the challenge. Can you accept this truth without collapsing into shame or defensiveness? Can you say, "Yes, I see myself in what I despise. Yes, I glimpse my potential in what I admire"? Most people cannot. They cling to the illusion that the problem is out there, that others are to blame, that their envy, their anger, their admiration have nothing to do with them. And so they remain prisoners of projection. Jung warned, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." The mirror effect is an invitation to awaken, to realize that every person you encounter is holding up a piece of your soul, waiting for you to recognize it. Let me share a story. I once worked alongside someone whose constant need for validation irritated me endlessly. I judged them as insecure, attention-seeking, exhausting. But as I reflected on my own reactions, I realized the truth. I too craved validation. I had simply hidden it behind subtler masks, overwork achievement, quiet fishing for praise. My judgment of them was really my rejection of myself. This realization was painful, but it was also freeing. Because once I saw it, I could begin to work with it. I no longer needed to attack them for what I refused to admit in me. The irritation dissolved into understanding, and from understanding into compassion. This is the alchemy of the mirror effect. The very people who disturb you the most can become the ones who free you if you have the courage to look into the reflection they offer. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you recognize your own patterns in others, the less reactive you become. You stop being dragged into unconscious battles. You stop needing to defend yourself or attack others. You begin to respond with awareness instead of react with projection. And people will notice. They may not understand why, but they will sense it. They will say you seem calmer, clearer, more real. What they're sensing is your decreased reactivity to their unconscious patterns. This creates what I call consciousness contagion. Your awareness becomes a ripple affecting those around you. When you refuse to play the old games of blame, projection, and persona, you invite others into a new kind of interaction. Authentic, grounded, awake. Some will resist clinging to the safety of their masks, but others will be drawn to your authenticity, like plants to sunlight. Jung believed this ripple could extend far beyond the individual. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know the world, will tell you." When you know yourself, your shadow, your projections, your authentic character, you are no longer at the mercy of the world's illusions. You become a beacon of authenticity, a culture creator, someone who helps reshape the collective by embodying consciousness in the personal. So the next time you find yourself irritated, envious, or in awe of someone, pause. Ask, what is this person showing me about myself? Because the mirror is always speaking. The only question is whether you are willing to see. We have walked through Jung's framework step by step. The shadow projections that reveal what we reject in ourselves. The mask fractures that expose who we are when our performance collapses. The integration test that shows whether we can grow or remain trapped. And finally, the mirror effect, where every person becomes a reflection of our own unconscious. Now the question remains, what do we do with this knowledge? Jung never intended these insights to be weapons for control. He intended them to be guides toward authenticity. To see clearly is not to dominate, it is to connect. To understand deeply is not to judge, it is to embrace. And to notice projections, masks, and shadows is not to condemn others, but to awaken ourselves. The truth is this: everyone you meet is wearing armor. Everyone is hiding wounds. Everyone is carrying pieces of themselves they cannot yet face. And you are no different. The moment you believe you stand above the unconscious, you've fallen back into its grip. The real task is humility, to realize that the shadows you see in others are also your own. Jung once wrote, "The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it." Most people never reach this second stage. They stay imprisoned in performance, in judgment, in projection. But those who dare to look inward find something extraordinary. They find that beneath the mask, beneath the shadow, lies not terror, but freedom. Because to see your shadow clearly is to reclaim your wholeness. To admit your defensiveness is to soften into authenticity. To recognize your projections is to dissolve the illusions that separate you from others. And when this happens, life itself changes. Conflicts become opportunities. Criticism becomes feedback. Difficult people become teachers. Every encounter becomes a doorway to self-discovery. Yes, this path is painful. Jung warned, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. To see yourself in the arrogance you hate, in the neediness you condemn, in the weaknesses you despise, this is no easy task. But this pain is not destruction. It is birth. It is the fire through which the unconscious is transformed into awareness. And as you walk this path, something even more remarkable occurs. Your awareness begins to ripple outward. You stop feeding unconscious drama, and others feel it. You no longer react with anger or shame when someone projects onto you. You see their struggle, and you respond with boundaries and compassion. In doing so, you create space for them to awaken as well. This is how one person's consciousness transforms relationships, families, even communities. Not by preaching, not by analyzing others into submission, but by embodying authenticity so fully that it gives others permission to do the same. Jung believed this was humanity's greatest hope. Not collective conformity, but individual awakening. He wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. But if you do know, if you've faced your shadow, acknowledged your mask, and embraced your authentic character, then the world cannot control you. You move through it as yourself, whole and awake." So here is the invitation. The next time you judge someone, pause and ask, where does this live in me? The next time your mask fractures under stress, ask, what truth about myself just slipped out? The next time someone reflects your shadow back to you, ask, can I face this without defense? Each of these moments is a chance to choose consciousness over unconsciousness, compassion over condemnation, authenticity over performance. And if you accept this invitation, if you dare to see yourself clearly, you become what Jung called individuated, whole, authentic, alive. Not perfect, but real. And in that realness, you light a fire that can transform not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Because in the end, Jung's great discovery was not just about reading others. It was about becoming who you truly are. The two reveals the shadow and the mask are not the end of the journey. They are the beginning, the doorway into a life lived awake. And so I leave you with this: watch the shadows. Notice the fractures. But most of all, turn the mirror toward yourself. For the greatest character you will ever uncover is not someone else's. It is your own. This is the mirror of the soul. Until next time, walk consciously.